The batch of Stranger Things episodes that dropped on December 25th mark one big lead up to the finale. Before you go into the final episode, here's where everyone is at the end of Season 5, Volume 2. Major spoilers ahead. The end of Volume 1 made it crystal clear that Will was going to play a major role in the climax of this story. And not too long into Volume 2, he makes good on that by infiltrating Vecna's mind and saving Max and Holly at the last second. It's a whole new wrinkle in the story. Will is a real-life sorcerer who's as strong as Vecna, at least temporarily when he can catch him off guard. But perhaps more surprising than that is the heart-to-heart Will has with his friends and family near the end of Episode 7, where he finally comes out despite his worries that everyone will look at him differently. To his relief, he's completely accepted by all the loved ones around him. Will has arguably seen more growth than anyone throughout Season 5, and no matter what happens to him after this, it was nice to see him finally realize that he can be accepted for who he is. Remember that Einstein-Rosen bridge that Mr. Clark was teaching about in Season 5, Volume 1? The wormhole? Well, Stranger Things doesn't throw in new quantum concepts just for education.
Einstein-Rosen bridges, more commonly known as wormholes, are often depicted in an hourglass-like shape, such as this.
It turns out that there's a picture-perfect wormhole connecting Hawkins to what Dustin dubs the Abyss, the chaotic dimension where the Demogorgons and Mind Flayer live before Vecna began pulling them down across the wormhole bridge to help in his conquest of Hawkins. In fact, that's what the Upside Down has been the entire time. It is the wormhole. Unfortunately, thanks to that fight between Dustin and Steve and a broken walkie-talkie, Nancy and Jonathan don't get the message that what they think is a shield generator holding up the wall around the Upside Down is actually a mass of exotic matter stabilizing the wormhole. So Nancy puts a load of buckshot into that ball of exotic matter. That's a big mistake, because suddenly the wormhole starts breaking down. The lab starts turning into yogurt, and the clock starts ticking for the eventual annihilation of Hawkins and the rest of the world. Holly and Max, meanwhile, have been trying to escape Vecna's mental memory maze without much luck. Max has been there long enough to know the rules of the realm, but it takes a fresh perspective in Holly to make a breakthrough. Realizing that the broken telescope cover isn't a random hole, Holly and Max trek out into the desert behind the caves until they reach the exact distance where the hole, when viewed through the telescope, perfectly lines up with the cave entrance. It turns out the lens cap is a rustic map, and that spot is also the exact location of an abandoned mine shaft. Don't worry, she's fine. In fact, she's more than fine because that mine shaft turns out to be the key to their way out. Max finally escapes Vecna's mind and wakes up in her own body. Holly does the same, except she's in the room where Vecna's been keeping her and the other kids in the trance state. She briefly manages to escape to the Upside Down before Vecna reels her back into his mind. One of the big reveals in Volume 2 of this season is a whopper. Eleven and all the others like her got their powers because the researchers at Hawkins' lab infused their pregnant mother's blood with Henry's blood. He's the source of everything. Previously, the series had hinted that the powers came from drugs, but as we've uncovered more and more about Henry and his work at the research lab, it started to get a little hard to accept that it was a coincidence that this powerful psychic dude just happened to be working in a lab dedicated to creating psychic abilities. It gets worse too. When Collie's relating her escape, she reveals that Dr. K is trying to do the same thing with a new generation of women. Although K's source of genetic material, Collie, isn't as pure or effective as Henry. That's also why K has been so adamant about capturing 11. She was arguably the only success that came out of those experiments all those years ago, with powers that rival Henry's. One of the most confusing moments in Season 5 came when Max and Holly climbed down into that mine shaft and lived through a memory of young Henry going up against an old-timey dude with a briefcase. The guy's terrified of Henry and shoots him in the hand before Henry beats him to death with a rock. So, yeah. What's up with that? At first glance, this would seem to be the traumatizing memory that has kept Henry away from the caves this whole time, but that doesn't totally make sense. The mine shaft is a good hike away from the cave system, and the memory doesn't appear to be all that traumatizing. There's the whole murder thing, but Henry doesn't seem too upset about that here. Really, it all centers on the briefcase. Huge spoilers here if you haven't seen the Broadway show Stranger Things: The First Shadow, but basically that briefcase holds technology that sends young Henry shooting into Dimension X, where he first encounters the Mind Flayer. When he's transported back home just half a day later, his blood now holds the magic that gives him, and eventually everyone else, their powers. In Collie's view, the way everybody's going about stopping Vecna is missing the big picture. She knows that Dr. K picked up Brenner's work where he left off, feeding Collie's blood to pregnant women to create more super babies, and Collie doesn't think that cycle will ever stop. If they kill Dr. K, someone else is going to step into her shoes and keep the work going. Maybe not right away, but eventually. The numbers' powers are just too valuable. The upshot of that, as Collie sees it, is that 11 and Mike will live their lives on the run. Eventually, someone will find them and kill Mike and take 11 captive again. When everyone destroys the wormhole and the Upside Down and cuts off the abyss from the world forever, Collie wants to stay in the wormhole with 11 so they can both disintegrate with it.
We stay on the bridge when the Upside Down vanishes. So will we.
It's a little on the nose, to be fair. In Hinduism, Kali is the god of cycles, time, and destruction. Exactly the elements she's embodying here when she convinces 11 that her self-sacrifice is the only way to put an end to that karmic cycle. For some reason, Vecna needs precisely 12 children to create the psychic link to finally merge the abyss with the Earth. He never says why he needs exactly 12, but his determination to get Holly back, the 12th child, suggests that 12 is his perfect number, and it may be too late in the game now to wrangle in a new child. So why? We think it has something to do with a ritual to reverse time. Remember, there are 12 numbers on a clock, and Vecna is big on clocks. 12 children that each correlate to 12 points in the circle of time, so to speak. It goes along with our theory that the finale will involve at least an attempt to travel back in time, if not a whole inversion of all the events that have happened so far. Again, Stranger Things doesn't throw out quantum concepts just for education.
Just think of all the places mankind could go. Another galaxy, another time even.
Stranger Things may be about psychic powers and interdimensional monsters and cool things from the 80s, but at its core, it's always been about relationships. Things were getting a little touchy in a few parts, but as everyone prepared to head into the finale, many of them got the closure they've been looking for a while. Will, again, came out and received the love and support of his family and friends. He also got the respect and trust of his mother, who'd spent so long trying to shelter him from danger. Dustin and Steve got over their differences surrounding Eddie and went back to being the friends they were in Season 3. Nancy and Jonathan, meanwhile, went the opposite direction, but even that was a happy ending to their relationship. Realizing that in the end, they aren't as similar as they've always wanted to believe, they break up. Jonathan gives Nancy that engagement ring he's been hauling around and unproposes to her.
Will you not marry me?
It's not the way we thought it was going to go, but it works. Once the gang figures out what Vecna's plan is, they need to come up with their own plan to stop it. To recap, Vecna is slowly collapsing the wormhole to bring the abyss crashing down on our world. 11 can probably stop him, but the problem is, from an earthly perspective, the abyss is way up in the sky, and 11 needs to be able to get close enough to Vecna to get into his mind. Also, there's the little matter of rescuing all those children being held hostage. It's a real pickle, but that's where Steve gets the chance to prove that there really is a brain under all that hair.
Magic bean.
He suggests letting Vecna move forward with his plan, collapsing the bridge just far enough to let them use the radio tower to reach the abyss and position 11 close enough to do her thing while they rescue the kids. Then they blow up the remains of the exotic matter and collapse the whole thing forever. What could go wrong? In the moments before the credits roll in Season 5, Volume 2, everything is reaching a crescendo. With Vecna pushing forward with his plan to collapse the worlds into each other, the clock is ticking. 11, Nancy, Jonathan, Will, Dustin, Collie, Steve, Mike, Lucas, Robin, Hopper, and Murray ram through the army's perimeter and bum rush their way right into the Upside Down to stop Vecna once and for all. And with Holly back under his control, Henry is ready to use the children to complete his goal of merging the abyss with Hawkins, bringing his own version of hell on Earth. Everything is crashing together at a fever pitch, setting up a wild ride for the Stranger Things finale on December 31st.